So what's going on here? I mean, because initially we heard this is not a horizontal merger. These are not direct competitors. This is a vertical merger. And normally those things are not big problems. So what's taken so long?
Yeah, this is a real surprise. And we saw Time Warner stock decline over 6% yesterday. So the ARBs were definitely surprised by this news. So I think what's going on here is clearly this is a transaction that was expected to be readily approved by the regulators. Yes, it's a large transaction, $85 billion, but it is a vertical transaction, a vertical merger, and those have been approved pretty consistently over the last 40 years by the Department of Justice, number one. Number two, we already have a recent precedent transaction where Comcast acquired NBC Universal, very similar to this transaction. That was approved by the regulators with very minor modifications. So again, the expectation was that this transaction was going to be approved. So this was a real surprise, and investors are wondering kind of what's behind the DOJ taking a different view of this. Are there any political undertones here that may be emboldening the Department of Justice to maybe take a tougher line? It remains to be seen.
Well, and as you suggest, something's new. This is not following precedent. And we have two new sheriffs in town. One's the President of the United States, one's the Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust. A question is this antitrust policy that's a different application of antitrust policy, or is this something larger up at the White House? And specifically antitrust policy, typically the question is, what consumer will have to pay more money? So what's the argument here that some consumer will have to pay more?
Yeah, I don't think that argument is clear at all, and I think that's why AT&T has taken a very hard stance here. Yesterday, they were very clear that they think that this transaction should go through, number one, and number two, they are prepared, and they are preparing their lawyers to get ready to take this to court and challenge the DOJ. So it feels like it really is a pivot. We talked to a lot of antitrust attorneys yesterday. Jen Rhee, who covers antitrust for us here at Bloomberg Intelligence, had a very strong opinion that this is very unusual for antitrust. So it really suggests that this is not so much a legal argument as maybe something else a little bit maybe political.
And among other things that are unusual, I don't remember the last time we had the Justice Department issuing statements about the negotiations while they're ongoing. Here the Justice Department came out and said, oh, it's really AT&T who suggested they might want to get rid of CNN. Immediately responded to by AT&T and said, no, we never said that. I don't remember that ever happening.
No, I think, certain protocols here are kind of being, violated, if you will, and it's very unusual that we're seeing the DOJ kind of litigate this in public to the extent that they are. And AT&T probably feels they have no recourse but to try to respond. And again, the CEO, Randall Stephenson, is going to speak today publicly at a conference, and I'm sure he'll have more to talk about that at the time. But, I think if you're AT&T, some of the remedies that the Department of Justice is suggesting potentially or have been reported, such as selling Turner Networks or divesting Turner Networks, is just a non-starter because the Turner Networks, which includes CNN, but lots of other cable networks, represent the majority of the value of Time Warner. So if that is off the table, or even if DirecTV is off the table, I think both of those would be a non-starter for AT&T.
So finally, AT&T said they'll take it to court. They'll litigate it. Is that realistic as a practical matter? Because that could take years to do.
I think it is. I think it happens very rarely over the last 20 years, but it does happen. And quite frankly, the DOJ generally has a stronger hand in those types of situations. But I think AT&T feels so comfortable that the precedent is on their side that they would feel very comfortable or confident about going forward.